Welcome to Woman Talk, where we keep it real. My name is Tara. Please join me and my girls Dee Dee and Promesta as we have difficult and informative conversations. Our goal is to uplift and encourage you. Please go with us on this journey.
I want to ask LaKiesha a little bit about her. Well, not a little bit, but can you share about your book, about your nonprofit? And you said when you helped people, you were helping yourself. So can you share, some things about your book and in your nonprofit?
Oh, yeah. The book that I wrote is called Sleepscaping to Safety. The Abbott, what is it? I forgot what it was called. It's called Abbott Marie, and the subtitle is Sleepscaping to Safety. Sleepscaping to safety is what I would do in the midst of the abuse. I had a horrible life. I don't recall very many good moments in my childhood. And so what I would do at night was I would sleepscape. I would lay in bed, imagining that my life was something other than what it was. And I would create these characters and their life would be my life until I woke up the next day. And the first book that I wrote about my experience is called Abbott Marie. Abbott Marie is the last character that I had created in my head. And she was the last image that I wanted and prayed for to become my reality before I found out the truth of my conception. When I found out the truth of my conception, it ended the sleepscaping because it was no longer a possibility for me to be rescued by this magical father who never knew that I existed and would come and rescue me. I wrote about it because I wanted school personnel especially to understand what kids go through. Mm-hmm. Because Abbott Marie is a 13-year-old little girl, and there is a section in there where the school personnel is involved because she goes missing, and the principal and some counselors are involved in figuring out where she is and getting her connected to where she needs to be. At the time when I was working for the Lansing School District, I realized that there was a huge disconnect in between the students and the staff members, and it was disheartening because I saw the children for who they were as individuals, and I also could see their individual internal struggles that they were facing at home. But the staff members just wanted them to be students when they came into the building. And so there was this disconnect with the staff and the students, and then with me, because they wanted me to just be a secretary. They didn't want me to be the counselor or someone the kids could come to. They just had no idea. And I don't think that it was intentional. I just think that they lacked the ability to actually see these children the way that the children needed them to be seen. And it culminated with a young girl coming to me after I started a program there to mentor the kids. And essentially what she ended up sharing with me was that she had been being verbally and physically abused by her father. And she showed me the wounds on her body, and it led to a CPS investigation and led to her being taken from the home. And that situation made me want to do something different, because if I had never been transparent and open with these kids, she would have never felt comfortable enough to come to me. And the reason why she felt comfortable to come to me outside of the mentor program was because I actually saw them. I didn't look at them and just want them to do as I said and, not ask questions, not be kids, not be disobedient. I didn't have this high expectation for them. I saw them as individuals. And while I did not believe that the staff members inadvertently overlooked these kids as individuals, they just lacked the capacity and the ability to. So around that time, God gave me the vision to just go ahead and release a book. And so that's when I released Abbott Marie, Sleepscaping to Safety. Part of that was for me to begin the healing process and that leg of my journey to healing. But it was also because I wanted school personnel members to understand these students come in from their own backgrounds. They come in dealing with a multitude of issues that you guys have no idea of, but you need to be consciously aware of what's going on, because even though I held a smile on my face, even though I hid what was going on, I was literally going through hell. And all I needed was for one adult to see me, not just see me, but to see me, to be able to help me and to step in a lot sooner than someone actually stepped in to help me. So yeah, I released Abbott Marie, Sleepscaping to Safety. And then further into my journey, I realized this Black trash bags are still a thing. What can I do about it? Instead of having flashbacks, instead of being constantly triggered, what can I do to affect change? And so I came up with the nonprofit quite a few years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago. I came up with the nonprofit. But last year is when I finally got the nonprofit Grace in a Case 501c3 approved, and I started taking steps toward actually doing something with it to become a part of the solution, because I know my limitations and I know that my path is not what other people think it should be. I have so many people telling me, you should be a foster parent, you should be this, you should be that. No, I shouldn't. I know that I did with the political side of that system. I just can't. So the nonprofit is a way that I could affect change on a grander scale, not just going through one traumatic experience and reliving my own traumatic experiences from one kid coming in my home and being taken out at a time. That would do more harm to me than it would help anybody. So I know that I can't be a foster parent, but Grace in a Case, oh my gosh, that is my baby. That is my passion. I want to wake up one day and I want the stories of the trash bags to be less and less and less. I don't want to wake up 20 years from now and the stories still be as prominent as they are today, because at 42 years old, they should not still be as prominent as they were when I was 16 experiencing what I experienced. There's a lot wrong with the foster care system, and we can sit up and we can talk about it all day long. But moving away from talking about it, what are you going to do to affect change? I remember being 15 years old and one of my CASA workers, who ironically used to be a social worker, and she told me that she had to stop being a social worker because it was killing her to have to deal with the political side of returning kids to homes that they shouldn't have had any business going to. And she wanted to be a part of the advocacy. So she became a CASA worker. And she came to me and she said, the Kellogg Foundation in Battle Creek, Michigan has given us grant money. They want to sponsor a team of foster youth that goes around sharing their stories and affecting change in the foster care system. So I was inducted into the Speak Up Now team at 16 years old, at 15 years old, actually. And at 16, I remember being a part of the change in Mississippi. And that was the first time that my story and my life actually affected people on a grander scale, because our speaking around the state of Mississippi to professionals and to other foster parents helped change the termination of parental rights bill in Mississippi. Even though I was going through my own traumatic experience, even though I was living in my own hell, being connected with other foster youth with more traumatic experiences humbled me. And it also helped me step away from myself. I know that I have a story, but what can I do to help my peers is what my mindset was. And the one thing that I kept hearing from my peers was, I've been in the foster care system for 10, 11, 12 years and nobody can adopt me because the state of Mississippi won't terminate my parents' rights, and they have no notion to. And because I kept hearing that, the question became, what can we do about this? Because this is ridiculous. Why are so many of you guys aging out of the foster care system unadoptable? Because your parents clearly can't get you, don't want you, whatever the case may be. So why is that loophole being allowed to fester? So that became our mission. Our mission was to travel the state and push the legislation to have the termination of parental rights bill passed. And at 16 years old, we accomplished that. So I knew back then that God had a bigger plan for me. And he kept telling me, if you trust me, I'm going to use your voice. If you trust me, I'm going to use your voice. And from that pivotal moment at 16 years old,
so powerful.
That I have known that in spite of everything that I am going through, he is going to use me. And it is why I've spent so much of my life with people wanting to shut me up. People have wanted to kill my voice and have wanted to shut me up and have not wanted to hear what I've had to say about particular topics, because I push the grain. I say what nobody wants to say, what nobody wants to deal with, because going against a system means you're going to face backlash. It means you're going to face retaliation. But if we don't go against these systems, then they continue to fester. And that's why we're here. And that's why we're still dealing with foster children transitioning through the system with trash bags. Who's going to buck the system in that area? Why is it taking so long for somebody to say this is not okay? So I have become, God has used my voice in many facets in many areas, but I am learning to hone in on that voice. And writing has been one of those ways that I hone in. And then this nonprofit is definitely a way that I hone in. And I'm definitely looking for help and support in any area that anybody can assist me in to get this moving. But that nonprofit is definitely my baby. And the writing is just helping me heal.
So can you share where your nonprofit is based out of right now?
Right now, I'm in East Lansing, Michigan. I'm here. It is 501c3 approved. It is registered. I do have all the business end of it taken care of, but right now I had a board set up and that board fell apart. So I'm basically with my board starting from scratch, trying to get that rebuilt so that I can jump on this and continue to get this bandwagon moving.
And what is the name of your nonprofit?
Grace in a Case.
Grace in a Case. So did y'all hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Grace in a Case. And I think that's beautiful because in one of our other episodes, we talked about how when we're going through something, how we've actually healed in that process by helping others.
Yes.
You know, so, and with this, so I am also starting a nonprofit that has to do with something similar. It's in the very beginning stage, so I don't want to, say too much about it right now. But I think that it is time. It is time to do something. It is time to make that change. It is time for people to hear our voice. It is time for us to hear his voice.
Yes.
And what we need to be saying, what we need to be doing, what we need to change. And so I think with that, you were saying that there's so many things that people have gone through, other children in foster care homes. And sometimes, without hearing their stories, it's like it's non-existent. Mm-hmm. And it's very painful to hear certain things that are going on behind these closed doors. So I would like for maybe you guys to share whether it happened to you, if maybe you can say that it happened to you, or it was a story of another person in a foster care home that was very traumatic. And again, we don't mean to say this. We want to share so that people are aware that these things are happening. Mm-hmm. So if there's something that you can speak about or share.
Let me jump in real quick, Promise. And I think one thing I want this to kind of be an overall theme. Mm-hmm. People don't understand the brokenness of children.
Yes.
Period. Because it doesn't make sense in their mind. Children are supposed to be carefree and, but with situations like Tasha, like Keisha, like myself, you don't understand that, and even you, and we'll get into other stuff too, even Dee Dee, it's like there's so much pain in everything that is built up that people don't understand, so they just kind of ignore it. Mm-hmm. Because there's no understanding for the brokenness of children. And when LaKiesha talks about sleepscaping, that is, is what we would call in mental health, like dissociation is what we call it. And it's where the trauma is so huge that the mind and the body kind of separate themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's a coping mechanism. Because I remember doing some of those very same things. There was always a different life that I was trying to have, that I wished I had, where my dad was going to come in with his big hat and write in. This was prior to me finding out, my parentage as well, on like his shiny horse or his big fancy car, and take me away to a different place, because what I was dealing with on a daily basis was hellish. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting that if you look at a lot of children's stories, you will see some, some overlap. And there's an understanding of like, wow, this is not, we don't operate in a vacuum, and this just didn't happen to me, it just didn't happen to you. There are many, 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 many stories like this. And then the question will be why, and how do we address it? Because they're still happening. Mm-hmm. And I see it in treatment, and it's like, I'm getting the foster parents think that the kids are bad, or they're this, or they're that. And I already knew my limitations. I'm like, let me work with them, in a different kind of way. I knew I did not have the strength inside of me to be a foster parent. It was just no way. No way. Because I knew what I was as a kid. I lived in it. And to be able to help, I mean, I can help in the treatment setting. That's great. But like day in and day out, that's very difficult. You know? And I mean, I don't know how much Didi want to speak to it. You got to have a different kind of heart. I'll say that.
You absolutely have to have a different kind of heart, even with, you know, even with Tasha, because me and Tasha we talk a lot, and not like really going into a lot of it, but even with Tasha and talking to Tasha, that's why me and her, I think, talk about these things, is because everybody's not going to understand, especially if they have not lived it. If you come from having both of your parents and they're married, they're together, and they raise you, how would you ever understand a child being removed out of a home and then placed somewhere? Because you couldn't even imagine, and saying, this is your new home and this is your new parents. Not they were born from, but this is now your parents. I personally couldn't imagine that. And so I think, you know, sometimes we have to take the time, and I think with adults, a lot of times is they make it about them and how they may feel, or if they're, maybe they feel like somebody is saying that they failed in some kind of way, when really they're not. You have to really take it, and can you really imagine being removed as a child? Because I know I could not imagine that. Even I had a step-parent adoption. You know what I'm saying? I cannot imagine being removed and saying, now you're no longer with your biological mother, you're no longer with your biological father, and this is your new family, and here you go. And then now you are coming in to adjust. You're adjusting, not people adjusting to you. Now you're adjusting to this family, and not just their family, you're adjusting to their extended family. And that this is now your new family, which brings me to, I know in Tasha's case, her biological family struggled with, like, you know, like just the extended family, because for them, of course, it wasn't fair that now Tasha and them got removed and was removed out of their life, but now they're strangers to her. And then, so now they're strangers for her, but they want the relationship that I know that me and Tasha have a good relationship. They might say, well, but I'm the biological. It doesn't matter. She was a child coming into a family who she knows that we love her and we all have this close relationship. So our bond is tight.
Yeah.
And it's really crazy, because when you look at it on both sides, and me and Tasha has had this discussion several times, is when you have a situation like that where, you know, the biological family feel that they should be more of the family, but then the family is the family because that's where you're at. But all of that has to mentally be a struggle for a person, because I couldn't imagine. I just really, you know, like, especially your mom. You know, people are raised, and not to say knock dads, but I'm saying people are raised with their mom, and then their dad may not be there. But to have neither, we can't, there's no way that that's not affecting somebody on a whole mental level. And even in our situation with raising, you know, and then Tasha, we have her niece. And so even with raising her, and I have to think about that sometimes, she's being raised with us and she loves us, but just think, she doesn't have either one of her. She left her mom and came to us, and it's like, okay, this is where you live now.
Yeah.
And not as parents.
And I was actually going to touch on that, Didi, just briefly. It's, like I said, myself and my two sisters, you know, were placed in, you know, foster care, but just seeing how, you know, I, you know, went through it, how my youngest sister, you know, went through it, and how my older sister went through it. I think with my older sister, it kind of hit her a lot harder than us too. Just the way that she dealt with it. You know, she, you know, struggled as a kid, freshman year of high school, dropping out of school, leaving our home, just, you know, trying to find herself, trying to find, you know, where she belongs, longing to be back with our biological parents. So that was her journey to find them. But it just hurt me because I see her life, and then I see our biological mom, like they're, you know, crossing the same paths. You know, my biological mom had 3 girls that she no longer had in her care. Now my older sister has 3 kids that she no longer has in her care, and kind of seeing her kind of struggle through life. And
thank you, Lord.
That
Lord, thank you, Lord.
Dee knows that my older sister, she, you know, that's one of my, you know, worst nightmares. You know, I wake up and I hear that, you know, something happened to her because she's out in the streets doing God knows what. And
thank you, Lord.
Just knowing that, you know, when she calls me, I'm not, you know, I'm not being mean to her. I'm not, you know, down in her life. I'm just here to listen because I know what she had to go through, and I know it's harder on her.
And you're a good support system for her though. And that's the one amazing thing that I can say about Tasha is I think she knows that she can call Tasha, and Tasha's not judgmental. If anything, she's supportive. Mm-hmm. And that's what, you know, so she's very, very supportive, and not just supportive of her, supportive of her niece that we're raising. I remember I had to tell Tasha, I said, when Tasha brought her to us, but she brought her with so much stuff that we did. Tasha probably remember I had to tell her, because Tasha had a child by, I think she a little bit after that or sometime after that. But I said, it's time for you to live your life, and we have her. You don't have to make sure she's okay, because Tasha was making sure she was okay. Tasha was providing her diapers. Tasha was, you know, providing so much. And I tell her, I said, she's good. You know, like, so we have her. So I know me and Tasha have that talk. I think that Tasha, and I think a lot of families should step back and think about this, but I think she appreciates the fact that she knows that we love her unconditionally. Like she tells us, that girl is spoiled, but we really, really treat her as, I don't know how to do it any different though, is that we treat her as one of our own. I mean, it's lucky that she's the baby as well. So there's no other, you know, adults, you know, no other kids here really, but she gets, you know, is that we really try to treat her as if she's one of our own, and we try to understand her struggles of not having, you know, not living with either one of her parents, even though I don't think at this point, she's so young, I don't think she remembers a lot of it, but still she has a great memory. So she remembers a lot that she even went on. And we got her when she was 3, and she remembers a lot of stuff that she went through before we even got her. Mm-hmm. And so I think for Tasha's older sister, the one blessing for her is that all 3 of her children are with our family. The 2 boys are adopted by a cousin, and then we have baby girl.
Mm-hmm. And the thing I will say about that, and I know it's hard because we always, and I'm saying we, even though I've not been in that situation, but I know when you are a foster parent or a guardian of a child, we always are trying to make sure that we're respectful of the parent. Yeah. But it's a lot of value in letting the child define their circumstances, because we'll say, like, they might come and say, Mom, and then it's, I'm not your mom. Your mom is here, there. But it gets them where they don't quite feel stable. Mm-hmm. And part of stability is you defining yourself within inside of your environment. So that's something for people just out there to think about who do foster or do adopt children. We always do that. We want to honor, because I remember feeling like I was embarrassed when my mom would show up. I'm being honest, because I felt like it was a lot of people who had gone long enough that they didn't know about her. So when she would show up, and then with her mental health issues, it would be a mess. And it would make me feel like so, just because I was trying so hard to fit in where I was. And the only mom I had at that point was my grandmother. So I called her mom. So then we be somewhere, the 3 of us together, and it's which mom you talking to? But it was just me being able to feel, even though it wasn't the best situation, me at least being able to define myself within inside of my environment was very important. So again, like I would say, just think about that when you foster kids or when you adopt kids, so that you give them choice. If they want to call you mom, what's wrong with that? If they want to call the dad, what's wrong with that? It's not. They're making room in their lives for what's happening for them and making sense out of it in a child's mind.
And it's funny you say that, because with our baby girl, she is more, when she calls me mom, she wants something. So she say, mom, I'll be like, what you want? Because we know. But that, another thing is, when you are fostering as well, is to make sure, it was very hard for me, and Tasha knows this, I struggled hard, especially when you're either adopting or fostering from a family member. That is difficult. You can separate yourself from a person you don't know. But when it comes to your family, you don't want to, Tasha know, because everybody know my mouth is kind of slick. It could be slick at times. Like I'm just blunt. Yeah, it's slick. But Tasha will tell you, it's been times that I would call her and be like, listen, this is what I want to say, but I'm not going to say this. Tasha tell you that. I'll say, this is like, I would try to say things in a way, because I would be devastated if I couldn't imagine being in a situation where I lost my 3 children. I really could not imagine that, So I try to talk to her in a way that I'm not hurting her, even because she's already hurt. You know what I'm saying? So she's already hurt because she don't have her kids. So if I start talking crazy, I never want to be that one to push her over the ledge. Tasha knows that we have this discussion. And so I try to be very careful and very mindful, but I did have to get to a point that it became a point where I had to choose between baby girl and my, where they're both my cousins. So I just call her baby girl, but baby girl and my cousin, I had to choose between who I was going to protect, because unfortunately, and maybe Terry, you might have something to say that could help me more, but I got to a point where I couldn't protect both. So I had so the baby became my protection.
But I remember telling Dee Dee early on, and that's what said, I mean, we've been friends for so long and family involved for so long. I know a lot about the situation from different perspectives, and we won't go into all those perspectives, but I would have to tell Dee Dee, because of my position, I couldn't say much, but I would be like, you doing too much. Cut it out. Stop. Don't do that. You got to sometimes let these things happen so that this can happen and all this kind of stuff. But what I would hear from Dee Dee is the hope she had that the situation was going to rectify and baby girl could go back home. And it was always that hope and always that hope and always that hope. And I'm on the other side of that going, ma'am, I'm going to need you to look at this realistically. Right. Look at A, look at B, look at C, look at D. But she still, and I think it would have been different if it wasn't a family member, because you have so much love in your heart for your family and you want the best for them and you want to see them do good, that she holding out for hope. And I would say, no, if you do that, you overstepping. Like it could be something as simple as, we're supposed to meet at this place. Well, instead of waiting on her to get there, I'm just going to go pick her up and bring her because I know that'll make it easier for her. Mm-hmm. You see? And it's like, but that's not for you to do. Don't do that, because then the real issues are not surfacing that need to surface. It would just be things like that. And I would watch Dee Dee, and I remember telling Dee Dee. She's like, no, it ain't going to be that. It ain't gonna be long. Dee Dee thought that this was a very much a temporary situation. Oh, absolutely. I looked at her and said, what I say?
And it wasn't, and it's not.
It wasn't, you know? And it was just because I know, and knowing Dee Dee and knowing her heart, her mouth says something, but her heart is very different. Mm-hmm. Trust. Dee Dee's heart is like putty. So her heart was just in a very different place. And it still is. That's what makes Dee 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 Dee. But that's the thing. She just really held out this hope and was willing to do whatever she could to help, I would say the reunification process.
Right.
I definitely held on to that, but it is hard with family. You got to think, you have to, I mean, you have holidays come up. You have to be in a position, you know, we eventually ended up in a position where we really just didn't go to things because it makes it when it makes it hard on the child. You know what I'm saying? And I guess that's really, you know, that it makes it very difficult for that child. And I had to get to that point where I was like, you know, oh my goodness, you know, where I had to draw the line, which made it hard for Tasha too, though, because Tasha definitely understood my stance, but at the same time, you have a sibling that you don't know how a person is going to react when you messing with somebody, money and kids. That's an issue. You know what I'm saying? And when a person may feel like they have nothing else, you know, it just, for me, it was just a very borderline that you don't never want it on your conscience that any decision that you made, because you got to think, if anything happens here, the baby girl is affected. That's who, you know, so good, bad, or indifferent of what went on. And actually what I'm saying, that I want to say this as well, we have to make sure that when we're in these situations too, that we don't speak bad about the parents. And that is one thing I'm gonna tell you. She's old enough that we've had the discussion that I had to say that she did the best that she could do. I can't say, oh, we've never said, oh, it's because she's a bad parenting, or it was bad. It's always, I said, she loves you the best that she knows how. So that takes it where that she's done her best, and people have limits. And I believe she's limited due to what she's been through because she remembers more. And then even though her and Tasha are not that far in age, Tasha, and I think she said this early on, has turned her switch off of even remembering things that went on. So I think that has helped protect her. Actually, I think she protected herself in a situation where she may not, it's good and bad, but at the same time, she's turned that switch off so she doesn't remember. Because I know we'll talk with your baby sister, and baby girl be your baby sister, and she remember everything. She'd be like, no, this happened. You don't remember this? And she's younger than her. And then she said, you have to remember this. But Tasha's turned that switch off to protect herself, is what I believe is probably what went on. And so she's protected, and that's why she'll say, I don't remember a lot of stuff, but the older one does and the baby does. And so she's in the middle. So I know that she had to kind of detach herself from some things.
Right.
Yeah. I know that it was interesting for me because when I was in foster care in Mississippi for a long time, even though I had forgiven my mother, I could not understand, like, how was it that I literally belonged to the largest family in Michigan and none of them are bothering to get me out of foster care in Mississippi? The rejection that I felt was immense. And I was so mad for a long time because before I entered the foster care system, and even in Michigan, before we went to Mississippi to avoid CPS, I would always tell my grandmother what was going on, or my aunts would see stuff. And it was like, I only had one aunt that I could recall that actually tried to call CPS. Her call to CPS ended with us being in Mississippi away from the abuse. Because as my mother's husband said, people in Mississippi mind their own business. You're not going to have anybody to tell. And he was, for the most part, he was right, but I could not understand how they knew why we were in Mississippi and they still left me down there in foster care once they knew that I was in foster care. And it was like, God, why would they leave me down here in foster care? Why wouldn't somebody come and get me? I had older cousins who were in a similar situation that I was with the abuse, and they were taken into CPS care before I was. And I had a relative, an aunt, who I now know was my aunt/sister, who was actively at one point trying to get one of those cousins. But why wasn't she trying to get me too? I'm your niece too. Why aren't you trying to get me? That rejection was profound and it was powerful. But just as God showed me the vision of my mother and it helped me to forgive her, I remember calling my grandmother right before my senior year of high school, telling her, you know, I'm being put out of this foster home because my foster parents are getting a divorce and he's keeping the house and they're going to put me in a group home. Because of my advocacy with the foster care system here, I know what goes on in those group homes. And if I go into a group home, I'm not staying, I'm going to run away. Because what's happened to those girls cannot and will not happen to me. I just can't deal with that. If you don't come and get me, you probably never see me again because I'm going off the radar. And I meant what I said. Long story short, she ended up coming to get me a few months later, right before my senior year of high school. Her and my grandfather, her husband, drove from Michigan to Mississippi to get me with my aunt, who was my age. My aunt and I are 1 day apart, so we're literally the same age. Within an hour of that car ride, that 13, 14-hour car ride, God didn't have to show me a vision of why he kept me from my family. He sat me in the midst of the revelation. The verbal abuse and the emotional abuse that my grandmother endured at the hands of my aunt was enough for me to understand. My family is a mess. God knew what he was doing when he kept me separate from them. It wasn't because they didn't want me. It wasn't because I was just this black sheep that nobody cared for. They didn't have the mental capacity, the emotional capacity to come and get me and to give me what God needed for me to get. Had I got what I thought I wanted or what I thought I needed, I would not be who I am today.
Absolutely.
It was like, we have to stop blaming other people for what we deem as their shortcomings and their failures. And we have to see outside of ourselves to see the bigger picture. What we think we want, what we think we need in all actuality is not what God needs for us, because if we needed it, we would have had it.
Right.
So as hard as my life has been, as much of the rejection that I've had to deal with, I have to keep telling myself, if it was supposed to be, it would have been. God is protecting you. It's cliche to say, but rejection is truly his protection.
Yeah.
And so there are family members who can take in children and adopt them within the family, but there are situations where it's just not feasible, where the plan that God has for you, it may be a point in time where he has to separate you. Mm-hmm. But even in all of that, the mental process, the healing, the evolution of that has to be allowed, the safe space to occur, because we help feeling the rejection, the isolation, but we need that circle to help us evolve mentally and emotionally, to help us see outside of ourselves, because we get so caught up in the battlefield of the mind that we don't realize that life is happening around us to other people. And that once we start talking, once we start emoting, and we start to see outside of ourselves, it helps us heal, because we start to say, whoa, so even though this was my internal reality, this is actually not reality at all.
And LaKiesha, I'm sorry, can I just ask her to say one thing? LaKiesha, can you go in and talk a little bit though about you, when you turned 18 and you were leaving the system, and how that was with, like what happened when you, I don't know what the correct word is, or matured out the system, or, they consider you becoming an adult. What did they do for you?
As soon as I got back to Michigan, my senior year of high school, and I was thrust into my family structure, I knew that it was hell. And I knew that I wanted no parts of it after I turned 18, because I felt like I was in a twilight zone. Because I was deemed a good kid by the foster care system here and in Mississippi, meaning nobody had to worry about me. I knew that going to school and getting my education was my outlet. I wasn't a problem child. I didn't act out. At school, I did what I was supposed to do. So when I expressed concern about being emancipated, nobody blinked an eye. When I say nobody blinked an eye, nobody blinked an eye. I turned 18 in April, and I was emancipated in June when I graduated high school. And that, in the moment, I was over the moon, because I finally had nobody telling me what to do, nobody controlling my life, nobody manipulating my behavior. I could go and be an adult. But hindsight is 20/20, and there is no way that at 18 years old, I should have just been mailed a check for $1,000 and been told good luck. There should have definitely been a process in place to make sure that I was well equipped emotionally, psychologically, all that, to live life on my own, because I was not. I had the motivation and I had the drive, but I was still not properly equipped to live life on my own. I should have been kept in the system until at least 22, 23 years old, and been transitioned out slowly. Not one day you're in foster care and the next day you're an adult. Go make life. It shouldn't happen in the way that it happened.
Sarah, you was going to say something.
Yeah, because I was listening to what LaKiesha was saying, and you know how we have those fantasy worlds. One of my fantasies was the car pulling up to the house and people coming inside grabbing me with my things. I was holding a bear that my mom gave me that I had crocheted a little. This was the fantasy thought. This didn't happen, but this was one of my fantasies, that the car would pull up and my grandmother would get to see them walking me out to the car to foster care. That's how I felt. That's how hellish my life was, being with my family, and people didn't even know that inside of me, those were the thoughts that I was thinking, that I thought somewhere there would have been a better life for me if I had been placed in foster care.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And again, I don't have a bad family. I don't want people to get that impression, but the things that happened to me being the kid, the forgotten one, mm-hmm. is what caused those feelings. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Tara, you said something just now, like really powerful, the forgotten one. Mm-hmm. Is that, LaKiesha and Tasha, is that how you felt?
Oh my gosh,
as
yes.
The forgotten one?
Oh my gosh, yes. Forgotten, lost, unwanted. And I talk about in a book that I'm writing about the experience of my mother calling me into the living room right before I got taken into foster care, explaining to me who my biological father was. She's telling me
that's a conversation.
How old were you?
I was 13 when she called me to the living room to explain this to me. And while she's talking, I mentally leave the conversation and I start replaying memories for the previous 13 years. And it's like, all this is starting to make sense. So my entire family has known who my biological father is. Nobody has said anything to me. His wife, who I thought was my grandmother, called me that girl. So she also knew what her husband was doing because she always referred to me as that girl. So this lady who was always calling this 2, 3, or 4-year-old child that girl, this is why she was calling me that. My friends, I had a couple of friends on 2 separate occasions who would get mad at me and would make flippant comments to me. That's why you and your mom got the same dad. And then when I would look at them and question them, oh girl, I'm just playing. And so when my mom is telling me this and I'm having these flashbacks, I'm thinking, why is my family members having conversations with my friends about who my biological father is, but nobody is telling me? Is this why they don't care about me being abused because I'm out of sight and I'm out of mind? They don't have to deal with the reality of LaKiesha. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm finding out that I'm this family secret and that people have been dancing around it and dancing around me and whispering, but not actually talking to me. So much of it started to make sense and it changed my whole aspect on life in like a whirlwind. Not only did that conversation in my sleepscaping, because there's no sense in sleepscaping if I know that it's never going to be a reality. It's not something that I can pray for or wish for, but the whole dynamic of how I viewed my family changed in that moment. And looking back at it now, part of that is also why God needed to keep me in Mississippi and why he needed to separate me. See, my stepfather thought that he was punishing me for calling CPS on my mother. And he thought that he was getting me to a place where he could actually force me to endure the abuse and where he could actually continue to beat my mother under protection because he was taking us away. But what he didn't realize was God knew that he had a bigger plan. You're taking me away from here to continue the abuse, but God is allowing you to take me away because he needs me to be protected from all of this that's going on around me so that he can eventually use me and so that I won't be destroyed in this family structure. Even when I came back here at 17, it's like I'm the one who's been through hell and back. I'm the one in foster care. My grandmother's youngest children were all raised in the home with her and their biological father, who worked at General Motors their entire lives. These kids had, my aunts and uncles, my youngest ones, had life made for them, but they were seemingly the worst ones. And it was like, how can you guys have what I've been dreaming of, a mother and a father who love you, take care of you, protect you, but you guys are giving everybody hell. You guys are just not functioning as you should be functioning. Why is it that I'm the one on paper who should be messed up, but I'm the one on paper who's actually somewhat got it together? a lot of this stuff just did not make sense, but a lot of it started to make sense later. And I just thank God that he protected me the way that he did, because he did not give me what I thought I wanted or what I thought I needed. And the toxicity of it all is just mind-boggling. But to find out the way that I found out who my biological father was is still an issue even today. Because again, it was my mother's biological father. She has 2 sisters who are her full-blown sisters, which means I have sisters who are my aunts and my sisters. And that's still an issue even today for them, because why do you keep talking about it? Why do you keep calling this, saying this? Why do you keep saying that? Because this is my truth and I have to live in it. I can't hide my story because it makes you comfortable, because making you comfortable means that God can't use me. And if me writing books and me creating documentaries, you know, and me doing everything that I'm doing to not only heal myself, but to help others heal, causes you discord, that's an internal issue that you have to deal with. I can't take responsibility for that. And I refuse to.
I say it like this. Y'all talked about it for years. Why is it a problem that I'm talking about my own self and my own business?
Right.
You know, and that conversation you talked about, I had the same with my mother, but I happened to be 19. And even though I knew, you know, but that flashback thing, you hear it. And then what I remember feeling sick, like, because people would be like, girl, you look just like your granddaddy, thinking he was my mom's father, and just different things like that. And then you would just be like, you know, and as a kid who don't have a voice, you don't say nothing. You just take it in and take it in and take it in and take it in. And that was, so those same things that you're talking about going through, I can tell you it was the exact same. The only difference was someone else was a witness to the conversation, so I couldn't sweep it under the rug and act like it hadn't happened. You know, so that was the thing. And it was like, this is real. This is my life. And like you said, even though part of me knew, and I was a lot older than you because I was 19, that it just, though that dream that I had of being rescued was never going to happen. That's a blow. And believe it or not, even though it was fictitious in your mind, it still caused another layer of trauma.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I'm wondering, and I know with each individual, it's different. With each person, it's different. Even for me, if I'm going through something, what I might need is different than what Tara might need or what Deandra might need. But for you, LaKiesha, for you, Tasha, to go back and think about maybe what was it that you needed, or how could a person have actually helped you and reached you? What was it that, looking back, how could somebody have, you know, like Tasha, you were saying you would just cry. You would just cry. And so I visualize this little girl like crying. And I know sometimes, well, when I think about, you know, what the things I went through, my mom would ask me, what's wrong? What's wrong? Why are you crying? Talk to me. And I would never tell her what was happening. How do you guys know or think, like, how could somebody have helped you, could have reached you at that time in need? Do you have I don't know. I guess I don't know, because I look back, and when my mom was asking me what's wrong, I didn't tell her. What can we do to break that silence? Or maybe Tara, maybe this is a question, like, you know, on the therapy side of it, how can we reach these children that are unreachable at that moment? You know, if somebody would have gone in, Tasha, at that moment when you were crying, would you have, what could have helped you, do you think? What would have helped you?
I think as a child, and just, you know, sitting there crying and, you know, being, you know, semi-forced to talk about, you know, how I was feeling, I just didn't know how to express it. So I think for me, I was looking for, you know, my adoptive parents, you know, are loving, still is to this day, But I do feel like that nurturing part was missing. Like maybe at the time, I guess wanted to be held, not necessarily forced to talk about why I'm crying. Just hold me, wait until it's over. And then, you know, if I feel comfortable and ready to talk, then I'll talk. But I feel like, you know, growing up and, you know, just sitting, you know, at the table and kind of being, you know, forced to talk about my feelings, I think that kind of helped me, you know, shut down a little bit. Like I don't want to talk about it. I just want to cry and just, you know, just hold me for the moment. And then when I'm ready, then we can talk about it. You know, it gets me sitting there crying doesn't necessarily mean I want to talk all the time. I just want to be held, you know, hold me, you know, like as a mother should, and just be there for me. I remember a time when this was when I was in high school. I think from middle school to high school is when I kind of, you know, bumped heads with my mom and just, you know, trying to figure out, you know, my purpose, trying to figure out my feelings. I just felt like there was a disconnection there. I didn't feel like she was, you know, nurturing me. Definitely loved me, but I didn't feel like, you know, she did things that, you know, a mother should be doing. I remember I locked myself in the bathroom. I was just at, you know, an emotional breaking point, you know, and I ended up, you know, grabbing a kitchen knife and just started cutting myself like on my arm. And I still have the scars, just that memory of like, I can just, you know, move my pain to something else. That way I don't have to think about it. And I remember when my dad found out I did it, you know, he was, you know, cleaning me up, you know, holding me, praying for me and things like that. And that's what I needed at the moment. But when my mom found out about it, it was a question of, you know, what's wrong with you? You know, why are you doing this? Not let me hold you, let me love on you. What's wrong with you? Like that's not what you want to hear when you're going through that. So I think just that nurturing, just hold me. That's all I was looking for as a child. And I didn't feel like I got that. So.
And LaKiesha, what about for you at that, you know, stage?
For me, all I needed and all I wanted was just to be allowed to be a kid.
Yeah.
Throughout my childhood, I was never allowed to just be a kid. I didn't have a childhood. Just see me for the kid that I was and give me the safe space to make the same mistakes and to go through the same trials and tribulations of a regular kid without having the weight of the world on my shoulders, not always being in protective mode. I had a lot of issues dealing with trust and dealing with women and dealing with dark-skinned men, because those were the sources of all of my frustration and my pain and my abuse and anxiety, because I was never protected. I wasn't blessed enough to get adopted into a family where I was finally welcomed and accepted. I tell people all the time, I was never parented. When I got pregnant with my daughter, I asked God, why would you put a baby in my womb? You know that I've never been a parent. I've never parented. I don't know how to do this. I don't have any healthy examples of parenting around me, but you put a child in my womb. So that's all I needed. And that's all I wanted, was just to be seen and just to be loved and nurtured and cared for as a kid should have, with no care in the world. And I never experienced that. And I say all that because as a kid, that's what I would have loved. That's what I wanted. That's what I needed. But I also look back over my life and I know that I call them mile markers. You know, on the highway when you're traveling, there are mile markers that show you you're closer and closer to your final destination. Mm-hmm. I'm working on a book called Mile Markers, because even though I didn't have what I thought I needed and wanted at the time, there were mile markers in my life who were not supposed to be permanent placements, but they were purposely positioned by God to let me know that I was on the right track and to give me the encouragement in that particular period of time of my life that I needed to keep me looking ahead and not looking back, and to keep me from drowning in my sorrow and in my frustration. And they all played a significant point in my life from childhood up through adulthood to get me to where I am. So even though my childhood was not ideal, even though my childhood was not what I would have liked it to be, it was what God allowed, because he knew that in all of that, he could still use all of that to get me to the position that I am in now. So if I had the opportunity to go back and change my life, I honestly would not do it, because I trust God. But where my own child is concerned, even though I wasn't parented, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I knew that I just wanted to be present. I wanted to be there physically and emotionally and psychologically. I wanted to give her what I thought that I needed, which was somebody who was physically there, the parent that goes to all the events, at all the parent-teacher conferences, at all the functions, the parent who is at home when you come home from school. I wanted to be physically present for my daughter. And she was spoiled. I focused, and I tell parents all the time now, I focused so much on giving my daughter what I did not have and what I felt was lacking in my life.
Yes.
That I did not have room to give her what she needed completely and wholly. So because I was broken and because I was in my own healing process as a parent, even though I gave my child my life, it still does not negate the fact that at 18 years old, my child was bringing me some things 2 years ago that shocked the hell out of me. But because of what I lacked growing up, which was definitely the free space to emote and to be verbal and to say, this is what I lack, this is what I need, this is what I'm feeling, I found the need to give my child the free space to tell me exactly how she feels about, what she perceives as my shortcomings, what she lacked and what she needed. Because even though she's now 20 years old, what she's brought to me has helped me grow as a person. And it is going to help me help other mothers. So I can go on and on about what I lacked as a child and what I needed, but I would rather focus on what I've done with it and the reverse of it to be better.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's good, because the reason I had asked that is because, so for those of you who know or don't know, there is a book out there. It's called The 5 Love Languages, the 5 languages of love. And there is one for your spouse, and understanding, there's hug, there's touch, there's gifts, all of these different languages, but also that's there for children as well. And so that's why I asked the question, because different people have different types of a love that they feel loved in a different type of way.
Yes.
And so to really, as women, we are grown now to be able to discern, to have that gift of discernment, to know, okay, Lord, tell me, how can I show them that they are loved, that they are wanted, so that they don't feel ashamed, so that they don't feel that rejection, or that they don't feel those feelings that they did growing up, that they will feel accepted. Yes. So that we can discern and really know, like I pray, like, God, show me, make that gift of discernment to a higher level, so that I can know how to tell Tasha and show Tasha, I love you, girl. I got you, girl. Because without knowing, let's say I'm buying Tasha all this stuff. I'm buying, girl, I went to the store, I bought you this t-shirt, you look so cute, and she's like, my girl be buying me all this stuff, but I don't feel loved, because maybe her love language is something else. It's affection. She just shared, she needed to be comforted. She needed to have that mom touch. So as a parent, or as a friend, or as a sister, if I buy her all these things and shower her with all these gifts, it's not gonna, I'm gonna bless her with material things, but she's gonna need that hug. She's gonna need that touch. Yes. So Lord, show us, give us that gift of discernment of how to love on our children, how to love the sister next to us, how to be able to truly show them so that they feel it, not because that's how we show them in ourselves, but because how they can truly receive it.
Yes, that's
so
good.
That gift of discernment on how to love on our sister is so important, and like I said, I could shower her with material things and she'll have all these things, but deep down she's needing a hug, then I've done it all wrong.
Yes, that's good.
And I think that the other thing is that you have to, I think when people are in the foster care system or adopted, that I wish they would just have where they have to go through counseling and therapy, because it's with kids, it's not a one side.
Do they not?
I think the family should have to. I think the ones adopting, and I think that they should do it as a family. And one of the reasons is because you need to understand, like, even baby girl, I take her to therapy sometimes. It's just because you want to be able to communicate. You want to be able to understand what that person is going through. Maybe they can't express it to you. Like I remember baby girl, she would never, and I don't speak ill of her mom or anything, but she would never ask me about her mom. And me and Tasha's talked about this. But when she would see Tasha, she would ask about her mom. And it was like she thought for some reason that I don't know if she thought that I would have a problem with her asking. But when she would see Tasha, she would ask, but as long as she could stay with us and, you know, she wouldn't say a word. So I put her in counseling because I felt like that's a discussion that needed to be had. And I made sure in that therapy session that I told her that I love your mom. So you should always, if you want to talk about your mom, we can talk about your mom. Like, I didn't want her to feel like she couldn't. And I just think it would be so nice in therapy because with even children, just period, it's not a one size fit all. You got 3 kids, you know that you got to give each child something different. You can't treat all 3 of your kids across the board and think that you have properly given them the attention that they need, because you didn't. And so I think that even, I know, you know, with Tasha, Tasha is more of an emotional, and I know that she does, you know, want that, you know, those hugs and that attention and stuff. But then you got to think about the fact that if she didn't receive it as a young child, that might be what she needs. But when people are adopting kids, they may not realize that, because see, they have their own, and then you're used to just going through life with your children. Not saying that your kids don't need it, because your kids might grow up and tell you they needed it too. And so they may, you know, grow up and say, hey, I needed this. But I feel like when families you can do more damage to a child if they come from one situation, and I'm gonna say a situation that wasn't that great, to another situation that might be good. It might be a better situation that they were in, but what if they needed that emotional piece that they're not getting? So now they're just, to me, being re-victimized. That's kind of, I don't know if maybe I'm using the right, you know, saying it correctly, but to me. And so I think for me, and like I said, I have a good relationship really with all of them. And that's why Tasha, you know, I call her, I'm kind of on her. I make her open up. I know when something's wrong. I'm like, what's going on? Because I know how she can close up. And that's why I do have to say this on here, is I definitely appreciate you coming on here, because I know this was difficult, but at the same time, I want you to look at this as possibly being a part of your healing process, because I think that this would be big for your healing, because this is a big step for you, like huge. And so I definitely want to tell you that I thank you, and I love you for even coming on here, and you already know that you can call me, but you can call any of these ladies on here. And I can tell you, when they will all be encouraging and empowering. I want you and LaKiesha to connect, because I know me and you talked. I think LaKiesha, I told you she might be an amazing person for a board member. And I know Tasha wanted to connect with you about helping out as far as with bags, you know, so that kids aren't carrying, you know, having trash bags. But definitely, it's just one of those things where I think that maybe the system could do something a little better with not just placing kids and moving. Like, even, you know, we have baby girl and she's been put in a guardianship. Well, after they turn 5, they really don't check on them after that. I think it's just, you know, like, check on them and make sure that they're good. Maybe require the therapy. I mean, they're giving the kids Medicaid and stuff, so they're gonna pay for it anyway. So require that people are going through this counseling to know what that particular child needs, because you adopt 3 children and you can have 3 children, but all 3 children need something different. It's not a one size fits all.
And I would say this too, just when talking about therapy for kids, and I know that, you know, and people are like, no, she didn't say that when she's a therapist, but we have to be very careful, because it can become like a punishment. I don't want to go talk to you about my feelings. I ain't did nothing wrong, you know, or why are you making me do this? Usually when we're required to do something, it feels like a punishment if we don't want to, you know. So I would say this even for clinicians. I see a lot of kids, and I've seen a lot of kids who have been in the foster care system. They don't like it. They don't want to come sit and talk to Miss Tara about their feelings. They want to do something, which, we do that. So if you believe your child needs therapy, not just because they're in foster care, that's not why. But if they start to present issues that show that, then sometimes we got to look at our own parenting. What are we doing that could be causing this issue? Because it could have been the same for our own natural children as well. So that's one thing to think about. But the other part of it is, I agree that people who are fostering, people who are adopting, they should be in counseling, or at least some extensive training about what they can do and what should be done, because children need different things.
Yeah.
That's very important. And I know Promise asked the question, what maybe was needed. I knew for me, I just needed to be seen. I exist, I'm here, and I'm struggling.
Right.
If I was good, probably not an issue, but I wasn't, and nobody noticed. And that's the scary thing. So that's what I would say. But I want to say, I feel so blessed to have had Tasha. I am just so proud of you right now. I know I can say that.
Yes.
I'm so proud of you that you came on here and you did that. And that you were open and sincere and just let everybody kind of hear from you. And LaKiesha, I hope we can connect.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to help you in any way that I can, because I just feel like, wow. And I'm so grateful that I had an opportunity to even meet you in this setting. So, and I thank you. I always say when we do this, we give, this has been a little different because we had guests, but we're giving the world a peek into our friendship, and just invited you to come along and be friends with us, and we're here, and what you see is what you get from us. Thank you again for joining us for Woman Talk Podcast. And, hey, wow, that's all I can say at this time.
So it's not about putting anybody down. It's not about saying that, oh, you did something wrong, but it's how can we better people and help you help kids that are even in your care. I mean, this helped me. I have a child in my care. So, and like Tara said, it's not even really about just your adopted or foster care or kids that you have in guardianship. It can be your own. And so my takeaways that I would say is definitely, because I'm a strong believer. I did it with my own kids that needed therapy. Baby girl wasn't the first one. I've had my own children. We've had to have therapy for communication, just making sure that we're effectively communicating with each other. Because you got to think, I've been through stuff too. So, so I would say, if you feel that you need therapy, and like Tara said, though, it doesn't have to be about the child doing something wrong. It can just be, we did family counseling to know that we're communicating. So it wasn't about the child, it was about what we need to do as a family. And so I would say, do not run away from therapy. I know that's one thing. I'm a strong believer. And so I would say, definitely, if you feel that you want to learn the child, you can't always point and say, what's wrong with you? It's what's going on, and maybe I'm not doing all that I need to do. So maybe if you need help in the therapy area, don't be ashamed to go there. And my other thing is to just make sure that we're not, if you are a person that have a child that's either adopted or in guardianship, is that you're not putting down their parents. The child is already going through enough. So to be putting down their parents is almost like putting them down. That's how I feel about it. And so, and to just love people. That's what you take away with me today.
Yes, and I also want to just thank the two of you. It was just amazing to hear your stories, that you guys are transparent. That is a beautiful thing for us as women, to be transparent so that other people can really see what it is that we've gone through. But to really, when we are transparent, we bless other people. We bless women that need this, that need us to be real. So, I just want to thank you guys again for taking the time to spend this time with us, to reach other women, to, be that voice that we said was silenced, that we said wasn't heard, so that we can be that voice, that you guys will be that voice. We'd like to thank you again for coming on this with us. And just to encourage you guys to continue to be that voice. LaKiesha, thank you for being that voice. Tasha, thank you for being that voice. Continue to use it, continue to be strong, continue to empower and encourage and uplift other women. If you see somebody going through something, like I always say on here, you don't have to suffer in silence. So I just want to thank you ladies for being, having that courage to do this and to continue to be that voice. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And see you next time on Woman Time.
We would just like to invite you in on our podcast where we're going to talk about some things. So get your tissues ready. It's going to be deep, but it's going to be real. So we invite you to just sit in with us and share our experiences, share your experiences with us, and we'll share ours with you.